Welcome to All Shook Up, the podcast. Man, I've been waiting for this one for a couple weeks now. Let me just read you his resume here. Broadcaster at Performance Racing Network, play-by-play broadcaster at Metro Jets, play-by-play broadcaster at Corrigan Oil Speedway, play-by-play broadcaster at Midwest Modified Tour, which he's doing today, play-by-play broadcaster at the International 500 Snowmobile Race. Awesome race, we're going to talk about that. Referee at USA Hockey. He's from Westerville, Ohio. Matt Prieur, welcome to All Shook Up, the podcast.
Appreciate you having me on.
Oh, thanks for being here, man. This is so cool. I'm so excited. Well, let's start off with who is Matt Prieur?
Well, I'm a professional broadcaster by trade. Like anybody else, you want to. There's things you want to do, things you want to achieve at a young age, and I knew early on that I wanted to be a motorsports broadcaster, and I made the decision in 2004 to chase that dream full time. And it's hard to believe now as I put the math together. It's 19 years ago. That's all I've done since 2004. Primarily in motorsports, and here in the last 4 years in hockey as well. Wow.
Yeah. I like to focus on folks who work hard, and boy, I had to know you a short time to know that you work hard. I love to see the work that you put into what you do, and I was from day one, back when Faith was racing. From day one, I seen you the week before the race posting information about the drivers and things, and you obviously work hard at doing your research and knowing, that's, to me it's unbelievable. It's very impressive. 14 years. So that's a long time. Share a couple of your favorite memories from those years.
Well, two of the memories are fairly recent. One was really recent, Easter Sunday, April 9th, on the Bristol Motor Speedway for the Food City Dirt Race. Privileged to have achieved a lifelong dream of being a broadcaster in the NASCAR Cup Series race. I was on pit road for the Performance Racing Network. It was a bit overwhelming, actually, and this is my 34th year of broadcasting motorsports, and nothing I've done in my entire life could prepare you for a NASCAR Cup Series race. You hear it all the time. Oh, there's such a difference between the Cup Series and the NASCAR Xfinity Series, and you think, oh yeah, you're on the same tracks, basically not really, but basically the same cars, but it's so different. You're on Mount Everest. You're on the top of the world. The world's watching. Millions of people are watching on TV. There's tens of thousands of people in the grandstands, and these are the best drivers in the world. And to be one of just 25 people in the world that are able to broadcast NASCAR events on the radio for PRN or the Motor Racing Network, it's certainly a privilege. And to me, that's number one on my list. A close number two was when I made my NASCAR debut in the Xfinity Series for PRN last May at Texas Motor Speedway during the NASCAR All-Star Weekend. It kind of hit me then, here I am, it's the Xfinity Series. I'm one step away from the Cup Series, but to even get to the Xfinity Series, it was again, a bit overwhelming. I was practically in tears before when they introduced me, and making his Performance Racing Network debut, from Flint, Michigan, Matt Prieur, and I got tears going down my eyes, and I'm trying to talk to Brett.
Man, I almost got one going now. It's like
I'm trying to talk to Brett Moffitt, and kind of a funny story with that. And luckily, I've known Brett since his late model days. He's raced right here at Berlin Raceway.
Okay.
Back in the ASA late model days. And Landon Castle was there as well, who I've known since he's 13 years old.
Yeah.
He's behind me. Him and Daniel Hemrick are behind me as I'm talking to Brett. They see how I'm like, oh my gosh, this is it, and they're both behind me. And actually Daniel kind of moved my earpiece and said, just keep going. You're doing fine. Just keep going. and it was so cool. I finally got into a rhythm, and it was just a wonderful broadcast. And but yeah, those two really stand out. There's some races here at Berlin Raceway. This is my favorite racetrack. This is my favorite short track. Jeff Striegel,
Mine too.
Jeff Striegel, Nick Messman, Mike Bursley, everybody here. They're the gold standard for short track racing, not only in the state of Michigan but in the country. There's been quite a few races here. One comes to mind, Eric Jones winning the Battle at Berlin not too many days after his father passed.
Yeah, I remember that.
That was pretty emotional there. There's actually a modified race that was it was actually the same day. Brian Nestor won over, to this day, is the biggest modified car count in Berlin Raceway history. 28 cars started, and Brian Nestor held off some of the best in the business to win that race. I mean,
and he's here today.
He's here today.
I
yes.
seen his trailer. Yeah.
The all-time.
In fact, they were here last night. I was amazed they were here spending the night.
Yeah, Brian and Bud Gray III, the promoters for the Midwest Modifieds Tour. The races that they put on, there's been some really good ones there as well. I mean, there's a lot of other races I think of. I think of Winchester Speedway, another one of my favorite racetracks. I mean, you got to be on the chip when you're running at Winchester. But yeah, all that to wrap that around is probably this past Easter Sunday for the Cup race at Bristol Motor Speedway would be my number one favorite, because that's the time I realized here we are.
I gotta be honest, when I seen that post that you were doing that and stuff for the first time, we don't know each other that well, but we know each other pretty well. But I felt a sense of pride. I was proud of you, and I'm like, well, yeah, that's what this is all about, just keep chasing that dream, never give up. And it was just really cool to see that, and I can't wait to see where you're going next.
It's as I mentioned before, it's a bit overwhelming because you are surrounded by the best in the world.
Yeah.
Whether it's on the radio side, I give all the thanks in the world to my boss at PRN, Doug Rice, for giving me the opportunity. I mean, him and Mark Garrow up in the booth they're two of the best in the world.
Yeah.
And so are Jeff Striegel and Alex Hayden on the MRN side. In the booth. I mean, and then you got the pit road reporters. These are the best broadcasters in the world. I mean, not in the country, not in North America. These are the best in the world. And to be part of that is really, it's a lifelong dream for sure. And I still almost got to pinch myself every now and then.
Kind of surreal.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
It really is. And like the Texas race last May, it took me a bit to get into a rhythm, to get going. You have the pre-race interviews there at Bristol, and the first one I interviewed, which I'll confess now, it was pre-set up. Eric Jones was my first interview on race day for the Cup Series.
Yeah.
And then go from him to Martin Truex Jr. to William Byron to Austin Dillon.
Oh my goodness.
And Jonathan Davenport and I go back several years when I was with the World of Outlaws late model series, and he was making his Cup debut as well. So I got the pre-race interview with Davenport too. It was and a buddy of mine, Rob Blount from Flow Racing, they were there documenting Davenport's week. Not only was he making his NASCAR Cup Series debut, he was also making his NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series debut. So they were documenting everything, and and after all that, in front of all the hundreds of thousands of people, it was just two old friends having a conversation.
That's awesome. And I followed him for a long time too. I got up in Mount Pleasant area where we live. There's no asphalt tracks, a lot of dirt, so you kind of get to know a lot of dirt races and stuff. And yeah, in fact, on my second episode, I had Logan Nickerson. Yep. He's just getting into it, really. I asked him, what's it like to race with them guys, and I said, it's going to take a couple years for you to, he said more like 5, or, it's longer than just a couple to get to,
for sure,
running with them. But he gets to race with them guys. He's raced with Davenport, and, and I've always looked up to Davenport as one to beat,
For sure. And Jonathan Davenport, like anyone else, like the guys I mentioned, they're human beings just like you and I. They've worked hard to achieve the success that they have, and it's refreshing, when you get to that level,
Yeah.
How, they're just like you and I sitting here having a conversation. They're the same guys.
Same guys.
They put their pants on just like you and I do.
Yeah.
They
The difference is, the difference that got them there, and you just said it, is they've worked hard to get there, and that's it.
I've always lived by the motto: you got to earn your way. And it's a hashtag that I have in my social media profiles: earn, not given.
That's good.
Nothing was given to me.
Yeah.
Pardon my, if you can't swear, I apologize.
No, you can swear.
But I busted my ass for 34 years.
You did.
To get to where I'm
at.
You
did. That, more than anything else, I mean, just everything about you I love, but that more than anything else is that's obvious in what you do. You don't have to say that. It's obvious. So just, if anybody listens to you or watches you or follows you, we know this guy's working his ass off. And, that's what I try to encourage people with, is anything is possible if you're willing to put in the work.
Yeah, absolutely. You have, if you want something, you've got to put in the work. You've got to earn the opportunities that you maybe eventually are given. I've been doing this for 34 years. 34. I called my first race when I was 15 years old, September 3rd, 1989, at Dixie Motor Speedway, which is now Birch Run Speedway.
Did you guys hear that? 15 years old, calling a race.
And it was just circumstances, The regular track announcer couldn't make it for whatever reason. I was working on the safety team at Dixie at the time, there at Dixie and Auto City Speedway over on the east side. And the promoters there, Dave and Ellen Scrivo, they knew I wanted to be an announcer. They knew I wanted to be a broadcaster. And the regular announcer didn't show up, says, "Hey, you're going up in the booth tonight." And it just so happened, if you remember back in those days, the sod sprints were also running pavements, so they were the moniker was the soda sprints on dirt and asphalt.
Right.
And it was them, IMCA modifieds, and factory stocks. I can tell you everything about it. Gary Fiedel won the
All right,
sprint
I'm going to put you on the spot. What year?
1989.
1989. I'm trying to think.
September 3rd, 1989, Labor Day weekend.
I was racing then. I raced there a few times. I don't know if I raced during this event you're talking about or what, but I raced primarily Tri-City Motor Speedway when it was asphalt. And 89, I'm pretty sure I was running a pro stock. And I went up to Whittemore. We raced up at Whittemore quite a bit.
So
we raced down at Dixie.
Rick Spencer and
Rick
Joe
Spencer,
McKenzie and all them guys.
Friend of mine.
Yep.
Yep. Oh, yeah. My hero, obviously, was Ed Howe.
Oh, of course.
Real cool side story, real quick. I always looked up to him. He was a hero, seemed out of reach or out of touch to me. And then we I got distracted there by the golf cart. So then my son, producer Josh over there, started racing go-karts, or actually it was my son Tyler racing. Anyway, ended up racing go-karts up at Houghton Lake. And my son raced against, what was his name? Chaz Howe's son. Charlie Howe. Yep, they raced together, and I stood for the whole summer of 2006. Every Friday night, I think we raced. I stood with Ed Howe at the fence watching our kids race.
Ed Howe was a hero of mine too, and when I was a kid, I always remember, the late Tom Kessenholtz was the announcer at Auto City Speedway. He'd always introduce him as Charles Edward Howe, and that was just my favorite thing. And he was. It was
like you were talking about earlier when I was standing at the fence with him. He went from being this hero, to just a guy standing at the fence talking while our kids were racing. It was good.
That was cool. One thing at the Xfinity race and the Cup race too, and I still can't get over it. I'm in my ear. I'm set up with equipment, and I know how it's going to sound. I have 4 voices in my ear. I have the broadcast itself. I have the producer in my ear. I have my fellow pit road reporters, and I have a scanner going on. And it's still so unreal to me to listen to Doug Rice and Mark Garrow in my ear doing the broadcast. It sometimes it takes me back. I'm like, oh wait, I'm on this broadcast.
That's so cool.
Hearing them guys for years and years and years.
So let's take a break here for a second, Joshua. Yeah, so that's cool. I remember when I was racing in 88, 89, and Ed was racing. In fact, I can go back further than that and tell you what, in the early 70s, when I was just an elementary age kid, my dad would take me. My mom still lives 2 miles from Tri-City Speedway. And we used to hear them every Thursday night. Back then they raced.
Yep.
And we used to hear them, and I'd always ask my dad, I want to go see him. And so one Thursday night, I'll never forget it, we went, and of course Ed Howe won that night. He seemed to always win there. But so from that moment on, he kind of became my hero, you know. I mean, we'd go over on Thursday night to watch the races at Tri-City, and Ed Howe, I didn't care where he started, he'd find his way to the front and win. The guy was just phenomenal race car driver.
We were probably the same places when I was a kid. From the time I was probably about 7 to about 12, my dad and I would go to the races 5 days a week. I mean, on Wednesday nights, it was wherever the MSPA races were. Thursdays were either Tri-City or Mount Clemens. Fridays was either Kalamazoo or Spartan. Saturdays was our travel day. And if the weather looked like crap, we'd stay close to home and go to Auto City. And then on Sundays, we'd go to Toledo in the afternoon and then bus butt home and catch features at Dixie that night.
No,
Did it for, like I said, from the time I was about 7 to 12, maybe 13 years old.
That's awesome. Now I can see where that dream came from. Yeah, that's awesome. Cool. Well, I kind of focus on chasing your dream, climbing that ladder. Couple quotes I thought of along the way. The one is, you know, for something to be a dream, I heard a quote that said something along the lines of, if it's a dream, you got to put in a lot of work and it's going to be hard to achieve. You're going to need help. You know, if it's not a dream, maybe it's just something from your to-do list, you know. And I don't know why I thought of that quote when you were saying that earlier, but bottom line is, dreams should be way up here. They should, when you get to that level, you should feel like you did down at Bristol. You know, I mean, because it's something you've worked your tail off for, and it took, you know, and there was a lot of steps in that ladder on the way there, sure. You know, and so I guess from your experience, talk to someone who's maybe had a dream like you did when you were young, and but just for whatever reason they're scared, they don't think they can do it, whatever reason, it's still just a dream. It's not something they're working towards. You got any words of encouragement for someone like that?
2 words come to mind right away, and that's never quit. No matter what, you just don't quit. There has been times where I've wanted to give up. I've wanted to not do this anymore, and that was actually, the last time was fairly recently. Probably, I think it was around the 2018 season. I was just grabbing any kind of independent event, any kind of independent race I could, just to stay, for lack of a better term, relevant. You know, and I'm not exactly a young guy anymore. I mean, I'll be 49 in July. But as I mentioned, I've been doing this for a long time, since 1989. And you can't let the distractions, you can't let the politics, you can't let anything get in your way, no matter what. Never, ever quit is the biggest thing I can say. And like I said, there's been times where I've wanted to, believe me. I mean, I'm going to say something on your podcast that probably a lot of people know. I'm a recovering alcoholic. I'll be 12 years sober in June. And there was a dark time in my life where I didn't want to do this. I didn't want to do anything. And finally, I just kind of woke up one day. You know, is the best way to put it. They say, you know, a revelation comes to you. You know, something out of the ordinary happens to you, and it is true. You know, I was frustrated. My parents had both just passed away within 6 months of each other, and it was
Wow.
a long grieving process. I was still doing this. I was still back then. I was traveling with the ASA Late Model Series, and then I got out of that and kind of came back home to try to rekindle the fire, if you will. Went back to Dixie, went back to Owasso Speedway. This is fast forwarding a little bit to 2009, and then it was about 2011. It's kind of things kind of came to a head, and I was going through a divorce, and I was at the low point. I was at a low point in my life, and the best way to put it is one day I woke up and kind of refocused everything and started over again, for the lack of a better term. Went back to the weekly short tracks. And by this time, this is 2011, and by this time I've been with two different national tours. I had announced at just about every racetrack here in the state of Michigan, and you start over. Sometimes you have to start over more than once, no matter how degrading you might think it might be. I mean, like I said, I've been in two national tours. The last thing I want to do is come back to a weekly short track.
But the worst thing you could do is just say, well, I'm done, and not start over.
I want to
emphasize that. Start over.
That was the other alternative, was to quit.
Right.
And my dad told me, once you start something, you finish it, no matter what.
Oh, say that again.
Once
you start something.
My dad told me, once you start something, you finish it, no matter what.
Oh, I love it. That's good.
And so, it was within 6 months after I became sober, I got back on a national tour again with CRA Super Series, and you just keep putting in the work. You refine yourself. You have to keep up with the times. Social media, for example, is probably the best and the worst thing to ever happen to shorten the racing in general.
Oh man,
there's
life in general.
There's a lot of pros, but the cons seem to kind of overshadow those pros. But you make it work. You keep up with everything. You keep up with technology. You keep up with you keep doing what you're doing. You keep doing what's comfortable to you. I'm comfortable when I'm at a racetrack. I'm a race fan who just happens to be holding the microphone. And one of the biggest things I learned very early on from one of my heroes, the late Mick Schuler, who was a former voice of Kalamazoo Speedway. Somebody is at that racetrack for everybody that's racing on that racetrack. Whether it's the best super late model driver in the country, down to the beginner in the compact division, whatever the case may be, someone is there watching them. And you just put in the work. Another one of my heroes, the late Dennis Castile. He used to be the voice of Auto City and Dixie and Spartan. Was a voice at Michigan International Speedway for a while. Everybody means something to somebody, no matter who it is. Someone, like I said, and again, someone is there watching that driver.
Right.
You better be you are the bridge between the pit area and the grandstands. The grandstand people want to know who's in the pit area, who's on the racetrack. That's you. That's your job.
Right.
And I've always felt that.
Even the entry-level guy, like you said, to some people, that may as well be Richard Petty out there.
Right.
I mean, because that's who they're there for.
Exactly. But all that to answer your question, never quit. Never give up, no matter what.
I love it. So, I forgot to ask you this up front, but...
No problem.
And we'll start to wind down here. How much time we got going? Yeah, we'll start to wind down, but we're... Anyway, I noticed 3-4 years ago when Faith was racing and you were announcing here that before every race day, at the beginning of every race day, you posted something. Can you quote it, or do you remember it?
Blessing, honor, and strength, glory, and power be to you, the only wise King.
I love that.
It's a song from Revelations. Carrie Job is probably the most popular version of that song. Phillips, Craig, and Dean also, I think, also sang that song as well. I actually seen them in concert a few years ago down at the Ohio Star Theater, just out. I live in Westerville, Ohio, outside of Columbus, and it's over in east of me in Amish country there in Ohio. But that verse kind of hits me a little bit, you know. And I mean, no matter what you do, no matter what you're going through, I mean, there's only one King, you know, and He's always got you. He promises you.
Yeah, and you know, for many years I went to church, and I was that guy, and I recently learned this. You said you're 49. I'm 61, and I'm just beginning to chase a dream doing this, and I'm having a blast doing it. But anyway, lost my train of thought on that one now. But Phillips, Craig, and Dean. So when you said that, I seen them in concert too. And when my oldest son, my second child, Tyler, turned 3 or 4, I actually sang. I can't sing worth a darn, okay? I got a terrible voice, but I sang in front of a crowd of 40 or 50 people. I sang to him with him sitting on my lap a Phillips, Craig, and Dean song about he wants to be just like me. Father, help me be a shining example for him to follow because he wants to be like me. An incredible song about a father-son relationship.
There's another quote that I like to use as well, especially if it's a bigger event, and it's by Chris Tomlin. It's from his song "God of Angel Armies." I have to read this one. I know who goes before me. I know who stands behind. The God of Angel Armies is always by my side.
Oh yeah, I know that song well. That's awesome. Awesome.
It's the only concert I've ever been to where I cried.
I got to tell you, I was impressed earlier when you brought up your recovering alcoholic, and you said you kind of mentioned something about saying that on my podcast. So there's a great example. You obviously researched a little bit, and you know what, putting in that work, just putting in that work.
I mean, as anybody that tells you that's known me for a while, I'm an open book. I mean, I think the youngsters now call it being blunt or something like that. To me, it's just being normal. There's no reason to, sugarcoat anything. There's no reason to be something you're not. I said, you and I have known each other a few years. This is me. I mean, I am who I am. I hold no apologies for that. I won't apologize for it. And I firmly believe, with a little help from the man above, it's got me to where I'm at today.
Oh, it has. It has. And I shamefully admit, it took me a while to learn that. I was one of probably my biggest struggles in life, and I didn't really face it or realize it was being a people pleaser. So I would act certain ways to try to please people. And just in the last couple of years, I've been just digging the heck out of that right out of my life and I've never been more content and happy since I started. Just, you know what? I'm just going to be blunt. I'm going to be honest. I'm just going to be myself. And
you said to me, it's just being normal.
Yeah, it's so rewarding to just wake up in the morning and know that I didn't hide something yesterday that I got to keep hidden, or
Right.
It's awesome. Okay, well, I think you got a busy day ahead of you.
Yeah.
You do.
Midwest Modifieds Tour season openers today. Lost a couple shows down in West Virginia due to Mother Nature, so the opener is here today, which is I sing the praises of Berlin Raceway, but to me it's the perfect opener for any kind of tour, and especially the Midwest Modifieds Tour, a track that used to have modifieds, but they don't have them as a weekly division anymore, so it's kind of the perfect neutral ground.
Yeah, I like that, and it looks like they got a big purse to win. Got a lot of cars showed up.
Yeah, I got looking at about 26 cars. So I want to get that record from 2015, 28. We may see a couple guys show up that weren't on the entry list or what have you, but either way, it's going to be a great show. Looking forward to it.
Me too. And after we finish up here and get our equipment all put away and stuff, Joshua and I are going to stay for the races.
Good.
We're going to walk around with the camera, so if you're fine with it, we might talk to you once
Absolutely.
or twice, and we're gonna try to get an idea, maybe show the people a little bit you at work, what you're so darn good at. So, so with that being said, I always do this with my guests. It's nothing. It's just something little, but it's a shovel. You familiar with the term keep digging?
Yep.
You've been digging for a lot of years, buddy. And
gone through a few shovels.
So I always give my guests one of these and encourage you to keep digging. I know, like, my son just recently got out of a treatment program for alcohol, and they talk about little things like this, you know. So the idea is here is when you're having one of those bad days where you're feeling like, you know, just have this to remind you to just keep digging, don't quit. So whichever one you want.
I like the pointy one.
Everybody picks the pointy one. I had a guest, a musician, Matt Moore. He's actually got like 74,000 followers now, and had a #1 song on Christian rock radio. He picked the pointy one, and he had his guitar with him, and he used it as a pick. It was.
I see you can do that.
Yeah, it was fun.
It was fun.
So, all right. So, with that being said, Mr. Matt Prieur, thank you so much for being on All Shook Up, and look forward to spending the rest of the day with you down at the track. So
appreciate it, man. Real privilege.
All right. Thank you. So at this point in the recording, Matt and I thought we were done. So we were just sitting there chatting. Josh, the producer dude, he had a different idea. He hit record again without telling us. And the conversation Matt and I had was some of the best of the day. And Josh, the producer dude, caught it on tape. Stay tuned. 18 when I went out there and turned 19 while I was out there. And, you know, we went to like La Jolla, just south of San Diego. There's cliffs. People jump off, went cliff jumping. And
one thing I remember about California is no trees.
There's
no trees.
Palm trees here and there.
There's nowhere to hide from the sun. I remember that. There was just nowhere to hide.
And where she's at's definitely that.
Yeah.
On the coast, like San Diego, in town, in the city of San Diego, there's a lot of palm trees, and you know. But then we used to go out a lot. We would go out to different beaches, and it's funny, but one of my favorite things to do while I was out there was that back then was the first run of Rocky Horror Picture Show. Remember
wow, yeah.
So at the Strand Theater in Ocean Beach, it played every Saturday at midnight.
Okay.
And I went to school. I was going to school for sonar, so I went to school from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m.
Okay.
And that's all I did for 9 months while I was out there. Wow. Every 20 days I had to stay on the base for 24 hours. Stand guard. It was a duty, you know. But other than that, I was in school from 2 to 6. 18-year-old, 19-year-old in California, and having every weekend off and every night off.
Nice.
It was beautiful.
That's cool.
So every Saturday night for, I bet you, 12 or 15 times in a row, me and a couple of buddies went to the Strand Theater and experienced that. It's pretty neat because you'd sit back. We took squirt guns, and people in the crowd different people would dress up and play different parts, and everybody, while the movie's going on, they would act it out on the stage too.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
And so one of the scenes, they're running with newspapers over their heads, and it's raining. So we'd sit back with squirt guns and squirt, and people in front of us would hold the newspapers. And
nice.
It was just, you know, for a young guy like that, that was pretty wild. But anyway, so she's doing good. She's still, believe it or not, she still has an issue with her shoulder and raising her arm, and from the VROA crash.
Right.
But in her JRO, or juvenile rheumatoid JRA, is it's still giving her some problems. She's on a medication now that's controlling it pretty good. But yeah, you know, she had the year or so after she hadn't raced, she was in a pretty dark time.
Yeah.
She's doing real good now, though. Like I said, she's doing a lot of tattooing, and she's actually sold a few pieces that she's painted.
Good for her.
So, you know, she's still chasing dreams.
Of course.
It's a different one now, but
right.
Well, that's what happens sometimes. Dreams change.
Right.
That's true. Sometimes.
Yeah.
You know, I'm one of the fortunate ones that mine never changed. You know?
Right.
Since I was a little kid. You know.
She had that dark time for a while, but like I said too, you know, she did get back up, and she's going, and she's working hard, and you know, again, so
good.
Yeah.
We didn't mention it on a podcast, but I was mentioning about 2018 when I was thinking about quitting and all that. It was actually Jeff Striegel that really helped me out. got me and my wife and my daughter passes to MIS, and we just sat and we were just bullshitting one time or during the weekend. He's like, "Why have you never applied for tried sending an audition tape for MRN?" I never did at that point. And I guess I could, So
Right.
it's like, I just send something in. Just send something in. So we did. I ended up auditioning for MRN twice, and COVID knocked out my original NASCAR debut. So then PRN came calling. It was actually during COVID, or during 2020. I worked a race at Jennerstown, and Mark Garrell was in the booth. First time I actually met Mark Garrell, and he was pretty impressed, and that's what led me into PRN.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
But it's because of Jeff Striegel. Because 2018,
What a guy.
I was ready to just, I'm done.
I
was just getting into hockey at that point. Yeah, we never even talked about hockey. I was just getting into hockey.
We didn't.
I mean, I've been around hockey all my life, and I've only been broadcasting hockey for 4 years. I wish I would have gotten it in sooner. Now,
Yeah. In fact, I downloaded a picture of you with your referee outfit and skates. I got off your Facebook page.
Little secret. I enjoy calling hockey more than I call racing.
I won't tell them what.
But I've been a referee for 29 years.
I always love hockey
used to
games
play.
because every now and then, when you go to the fights, a hockey game breaks out. Yeah,
I used to play when I was a kid and through high school. I was a goalie, and I tore my knee up just after my senior year.
You must have been right at that borderline because southern, like Detroit area, the high school teams had hockey teams.
Yeah, I was born and raised in Flint.
I was in Auburn, Bay City, and there was no hockey teams in our school.
Yeah, I was born and raised in Flint.
Yeah.
And I lived there the first 30 years of my life. Then I moved to Ovid, outside of Owasso. Well, you know Ovid, outside of Owasso.
Oh yeah.
And I was here in Grand Rapids for a couple of years.
Owasso Kart Speedway.
I was
funny.
here in Grand Rapids for a couple of years. I went to Indiana for a year. I've been in Columbus, Westerville, Ohio. It's northeast suburbs since 2015.
Funny story when Faith was 8-9 years old, racing go-karts. We went down to Owasso a lot. And the first time we went down there, we were going through Ovid Elsie, and our radio station from home was fading out. Just hit search, and it landed on a polka station. And
Nice.
it's a 24/7,
I know the station.
Yeah. So it comes on, and when I was a little kid, I took accordion lessons.
Yeah.
Polkas were huge. They always was played at our house and stuff. So here's this polka station we stumbled across. Weak signal. You only get it it comes in good at Owasso Kart Speedway.
Yes.
So going through there, we'd always turn it on, and Faith was young enough, where that was cool to her.
Right.
Her and her dad got the polka station on the way to
Nice.
every time.
Nice.
Yeah, I got video. If you go back through my Facebook back years ago, I got video of in the van pulling the go-kart trailer and polkas on the radio and me and But Jeff Striegel, I got to tell you this because I first met him. Faith was running a bandolero at Corrigan Oil or Spartan, and she was coming to Grand Rapids to DeVos every 6 weeks for an infusion for her JRA. And somebody at the hospital nominated her for back when they did that
Racing awareness.
Awareness, and she got selected. And we come over here, and I didn't know who Jeff Striegel was. I thought he was Racing Awareness or part of it. That's all I knew. And we come over and come up to the pit gate, and from the minute we walked up there and introduced who we were, it's like they rolled out the red carpet for Faith. And I'll never forget as long as I live. So Jeff kind of comes over and gives us a tour, tells us what's going on, what to expect. He says she was the first racer that was a guest through that. And so he asked her if she wanted to be a spotter with him. So her and him went up in the stands, and she had the headphones on. I'll never forget it. Dave Lake. White flag, getting ready to go green. They're coming around to go green. He says, "Faith, got any tips for me?" From the car.
Nice.
Oh, she's got this glow on her face.
That's awesome.
She's 9 or 10, And she says, well, I think she was 12. Anyway, she says, I couldn't believe it. Because I'm sitting there kind of just watching her, and so I didn't hear what he said. She's got headphones on. Mm-hmm. She goes, go fast, turn left.
Right.
And so after they started racing, a caution come out or something, I says, when you said go fast, turn left, what was that? She says, he asked me if I had any tips.
Nice.
I'm like, oh, no way.
Yep.
Yeah. So then afterwards, he wins that night. So her and Jeff go down, go across the track, go into victory lane. She's in all the pictures with them.
Nice.
And actually gets the trophy. He gives it to her.
Very cool.
And we're all standing around in the pits afterwards. Everybody's talking, and Jeff's busy. And some guy comes up to me, an older guy, and he says, quite the guy. I was like, man, that's just amazing what they're doing. He says, you know who that is, right? And I'm like, Jeff Striegel. He says, like, oh, that's the voice of NASCAR. Mm-hmm. I'm like, really? I didn't know that. Yeah, so then he says, I got to tell you, he says, that's the real deal right there. He says, what he's doing and all he's done for it's not because he's getting paid to do it. It's him, you know. That's the real deal. And he says, I'll tell you how I met him. And this is an older guy. He's like, one day he was a racing awareness night here at the track, and Jeff was at a NASCAR race somewhere and had to be back, and called, and one person asked another, hey, you know, we need somebody, his flight got canceled. And he's like, I got on an airplane. Mm-hmm. And he flew and picked him up, brought him back.
Oh.
And he says, I've been flying him around ever since. You know, so I don't, maybe you know who it was, the guy. But it was an older guy, but he flew Jeff around quite often, it sounded like. And this is the coolest night in the world.
I met Jeff here. I was 20, 21. I was traveling with the Iceman Supercar Series, and we had a race here. And back then, he was on the radio broadcast here, the local radio station. Because back then, it was the PA, then they had the local radio. I mean, there wasn't streaming or nothing back then.
Right.
But he was the pit road guy for the radio broadcast. Whatever the radio station escapes me. I'll find out what it was. But I met him that way. I was walking around the pits, you know, getting my driver's info and all that, and he just came up and introduced himself. This is, I said, 95. It had to been 95. I was 20. Yeah, I was 20.
Yeah. So, from that day on, that night on, I mean, Jeff just fell in love with Faith, and I mean, it was phenomenal.
He's a good guy.
Yeah,
he's a good friend to have.
Side note, he's agreed to do this too.
Good.
I was, when I messaged you, called him actually, called the track, left a message, and then sent him a message. I don't know how often you get your phone messages, but blah blah blah, and you know, Matt's going to be a guest on my podcast. We need a space. What can we do? And then I says, and also, I'd appreciate it if you'd consider being a guest sometime. And so the next day, I'm at work driving, and my phone rings, and it lights up Jeff Striegel. I'm like, and we talked for like 20 minutes, and he says, I think probably because of PRN and MRN or whatever, in June and July, he's around way more.
Yes. Yeah.
So he says, guaranteed. He says, I promise you, Rick, we'll do an episode in June or July. So
MRN and PRN trade off broadcast. PRN does all the Speedway Motorsports owned facilities, which is I think I can name them all. Bristol, Charlotte, New Hampshire, Texas, Sonoma, Coda. There's more in there, I know. Oh, Dover, Nashville. They now own North Wilkesboro. They will own Nashville Fairgrounds.
I just wanted to know, like, what got you into the hockey, and like, what kind of hockey were you broadcasting? Was it like college hockey?
Well, I've been a referee for 29 years. Like I said, I got hurt playing years and years ago, and I wanted to stay involved in hockey, so I started refereeing. On the broadcasting side, it's really hard to get into the broadcasting side of hockey because there's a lot of established people there. And I just kind of put it on the back burner for a while. Well, one night, it was in 2016, actually, a buddy of mine, Jerry Liscombe Jr., he's the voice of the Sioux Greyhounds, the Ontario Hockey League. They come down here in Michigan, they play the Flint Firebirds, Saginaw Spirit, and I happened to be in Flint with my daughter, and I reached out to him and said, hey, can you get us a couple tickets, you know, to come see the game between the Firebirds and the Greyhounds? He's like, hey, I could use you as my color analyst. My guy can't make the trip.
Oh, no way.
I'm like, sure, all right, I'll try. I said, I've never broadcasted hockey before, but I've played, and he knew I've played, I've refereed, you know.
Right.
So it was November 4th, 2016. That sounds about right.
Remembers that. Details.
It was the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds and the Flint Firebirds. They're in Flint, and I was his color analyst, and it just struck a nerve. I'm like, this is cool. I mean, I'd love to do this, but it's hard to get into that. Well, down in Columbus, the Columbus Mavericks were a brand new junior hockey team. They were granted an expansion franchise in the United States Premier Hockey League, the USPHL. I was the first one to apply, and I got the job.
Nice.
And I spent 2 years with the Mavericks, and this is the 1920 season. And kind of funny, my first broadcast solo as a play-by-play, I had the assistant athletic director for Ohio State was probably 3 people down from me, and you got kind of set it up a little bit. The broadcast booth in Columbus, it was at Chiller Ice Rinks North in Lewis Center, Ohio. The broadcast booth was set up pretty much in the grandstand. So I'm next to you. I'm broadcasting the game, and you're sitting there watching the game, basically. I mean, it was a little setup like what you have here, which is a nice setup, by the way. I mean, it's a table maybe this big in the grandstand. I'm calling this game by myself. Well, the assistant athletic director for Ohio State was there. He was 2-3 people down from me. After the game, he says, hey, I'd really like you to put you on some Buckeye broadcasts. Nice. So that first year, 1920, I called all the Columbus Mavericks home games. I was invited to several showcases. I got to go to the national championships, which unfortunately, I did call a few games at the championships, but then it was eventually canceled that's when the pandemic broke out. But I also called a handful of Ohio State men's NCAA Division I games and women's games. But then, unfortunately, the pandemic broke out, and they decided to stop using independent contractors. So they now go in-house in their communications department. So that was a bummer. But I was with the Mavericks for 2 years, and then the Metro Jets over in Mount Clemens, north of Detroit, reached out, and I had known them. They were in the same division as the Columbus Mavericks, and they really wanted me to come up to Mount Clemens to be their voice. And I mentioned the Berlin Raceway is the gold standard in short track racing. Well, the Metro Jets Hockey Club is probably the gold standard in junior hockey in the country.
Nice.
And they make it worth my while to travel 4 hours one way every weekend to call home games for the Jets.
You know something else. Not to switch gears, but because we got to get going here. But I was. From the beginning, I wanted to ask you about the I-500 race this past.
Oh yeah,
Joey Burt.
Yep.
Okay.
I know Joey well.
Drove one of our go-karts for a season in Oil City.
Okay.
And only a couple races, and then he went on to a 4-cylinder or something, and he races cars. But wow, just for a second, share about that last lap or two, or that experience for you, because that had to be just as crazy for you as anybody.
If you've never been to the International 500 Snowmobile Race, it is 500 laps, which is 500 miles, on a 1-mile ice oval. It's up in Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan. It's the racetrack itself is located right behind Lake Superior State University. I mean, it's a big 1 mile. I mean, it's got some banking to it and everything. And the race typically lasts anywhere between 7 to 10 hours, depending on track conditions.
And they usually switch 2 or 3 drivers.
Yep.
Okay.
And the pit stops are amazing. I mean, it's kind of the same it's the same thing as calling car races. It's just the terminology is different. Drivers are riders. Your steering wheels are handlebars. Your tires are skis. Your shocks are carbides. And you actually switch riders during pit stops.
Not drivers.
All right. They're called riders.
Right.
And so 490 miles into this race. I mean, it's probably even go even sooner than that. You've got these guys battling and everyone's seen the video. They're coming out of turn 4, coming out for the checkered flag, and they're beating the hell out of each other. And you got to remember, these aren't cars; these are snowmobiles.
Right.
There's nothing protecting them.
Right, their legs are hitting each other's legs.
With a car, you've got sheet metal, you got roll bars and everything. With a snowmobile, you got each other. That's all you have, and they're beating the hell out of each other coming down for the checkered flag. It was amazing.
Oh,
it was just an amazing finish, and I. A lot of people think I'm full of crap when I say this, but the International 500 Snowmobile Race Week is my favorite race week of the year.
Oh, I can tell. I can tell you love it.
Sault Ste. Marie, I mean, it's the biggest event in Sault Ste. Marie all year.
It's the Daytona 500 of snowmobile.
Oh, it
race.
absolutely is. It's modeled. Actually, it's modeled after the Indianapolis 500.
Right.
And they roll out the red carpet for everybody, and it's such the moment. You can feel the anticipation. You can feel the momentum building each and every day, because there's the kids snowmobile races that kick things off, which is cool. It's just fun.
Right.
And then you've got the support divisions, and you've got the 2 days of qualifying, and everything just builds up. And then when the green flag drops, it's one of the few races in anywhere. I mean, other than Bristol, of course, in Texas. It's one of the few races anymore where I get goosebumps getting ready, calling the green flags out. Right. I mean, it is amazing to watch 38 sleds come out of turn 4. They're idling. The green flag comes out, and 38 sleds hit the gas.
Right.
I mean, it is amazing. They go under that famed bridge in turn 1. It is so amazing.
And they break the 100-mile-an-hour mark.
Oh,
they
yeah,
down the straightaways.
They reach up to 120, 130 miles.
That's just crazy on a snowmobile.
Yeah, it's
back to that finish though. Was it .00?
They had to go beyond the scoring monitor. Shows up to 1,000th of a second. They had to go beyond that to figure out who actually won.
54 years, there's never been one even close to being that close.
Yeah, it's the closest finish in I-500 history. And I mean, in this day of technology, there's no such thing as a tie anymore.
Right.
And so they had to go back a little bit to figure it out. Okay, Tommy Bauer Racing, won the race.
Well, and I got to tell you, I didn't mention this earlier, but he's already agreed. In fact, we were supposed to have recorded an episode by now. Different things have happened, but
right.
Chad Bauer's going to be a guest with me.
Oh, good. Chad's a great
guy. Talk
guy.
about his dad, and we're going to talk
Chad's
about the racing and all that. And anyway.
Yep.
Yeah, because Joey had driven my go-kart once, and Joey, I watched the replay of that last lap 100 times. When they're hitting each other and he gets them skis up in the air, like, I thought he was gonna flip. It's like,
and then at the end, they cross the line, the checkered flag, and then, the 29 sled, the DL Racing sled, they end up going into the hay bales.
Into the hay bales, yeah.
At the end of it.
Yeah.
I mean,
and having been around racing a lot in my life, I don't want to even think anything bad, but I'm sure there was a lot of like, I don't think he beat me. I'm sure, of course, when it's that close, holy cow!
But I mean, here it is, 7.5, 8 hours, whatever the case was later, and you're coming out of turn 4 for the checkered, still battling for the win. You're gonna beat the crap out of each other. You're trying to win the I-500.
Right. Right. Yeah, and Tommy Bauer Racing's been in it 52 of the 54 years. I mean, but yeah. And I know if it was me that was the 0007. There's no way I would accept that and just walk away. Let's talk about this because
I mean,
but
it's amazing. I mean, there won't be another. I don't think there. If another finish happens like that again, it'd be great. But that's just a once in a lifetime opportunity.
I've watched a lot of races in my lifetime, snowmobile, car, and it ain't every day you get a finish that's that darn close. It's just so cool.
That's probably in my top 5 of most exciting broadcast I've ever been a part of, for sure. Bristol's probably 1, Texas is 2. There's probably I-500 is probably 4 or 3 or 4.
Back in the 70s, they had the Triple Crown.
Yep.
Thunder Bay, Traverse City,
and
then Sioux. Yep. And I was at my old one of my older brothers, Ross. His whole family, they grew up. He lived for years up in Traverse City, so we used to go to the Traverse City 250. I went to that several times. And I was always rooting for the Thunderjet. I don't know what the teams were, but if there was a Thunderjet in the race, that's what I was rooting for, because we had snowmobiles. So
yeah, today now it's it's Polaris, Ski-Doo, Yamaha, Arctic Cat. I mean,
What's the guy's name that won so many races on a Thunderjet? Edema.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
And John Wick III, who was one of my pit road reporters, he's the only man to have ever won it by himself. And that'll never be broken because the rules say you can't run a race by yourself anymore.
Right.
And John Wick III, he did it 4 times. He won it by
500
himself.
miles?
500
by
miles.
himself.
He did it 4 times. And he's the only one that'll ever do it. He could still, he's probably, I think he's your age, probably 60, 59, 60, whatever the case may be. He could still ride today.
Oh,
I mean, he's just a brute, man.
I was going to say, if he's running that 500 miles by himself, you can bet that during the off season, he's working out and training. There's no way somebody that can just walk on and...
The I-500 we have what is called the 2023 I-500 Pure Michigan Summer Tour this season. We're coming to all, like, I think it's 9 racetracks here in the state of Michigan. We're coming to Berlin. I gotta get with Jeff to find out a date with that. That's the only date that's TBA. But we're gonna have like a display table set up. We're gonna have a race sled on display. Board members are gonna be there. I'm trying to get John to come over for a couple races. He'd be a wonderful interview for your podcast. John Wick III.
All right.
He would be amazing to interview.
I'm gonna look into that then.
I mean, you want the definition?
I'm gonna ask him.
The definition of never give up.
I got that written on the wall that you can't see in our studio. When you're sitting, you could see it. Yep. It's right there on the wall. Never stop inviting guests, and nobody's too big. You know, I'm inviting people. I'm inviting people like Cameron Haynes and David Goggins. You know, because
John Wick III and Rick Federer, the chairman of the board for the I-500, he would be an amazing interview.
Yeah,
he's the reason I'm at the I-500.
Yeah,
and Rick Federer would be he would be an amazing interview, and he will talk your ear off. You think I talk a lot? Boy, he will talk your ear off. But he has such great stories. He has such great stories, and he's been with the I-500 for a long time, and those 2 guys right there. I'll send you guys.
I think Joshua's writing them down over there.
I'll send you guys the summer tour schedule. Like I said, we still got to get we've got 8 of the 9 dates. We still got to get a date for here. I'm
any other names too that like you think of?
Rick Federer, and Wick is spelled W-I-C-H-T, and Rick is R-I-C, Federer, F-E-D-E-R-E-A-U. I had to think about that.
E-A-U, so it's French.
Federer.
Oh,
yes.
Yeah.
They try to break you, they try to